think you ought to know. That Men's Radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's Men's Radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ, Kane, and Phil Dave.
And a very happy Wednesday to you.
I'll be the judge of that.
Well, you no need to be like that.
I think I do. A couple of things I want to say before we go to our very special guest, who I know is in the digital. Phil. Did you lay out a really nice buffet in the digital green room today?
I believe so. Yes, I'm getting
all the extra. I gave you, extra budget.
Well, yeah, you see, the problem is that our special guest probably knows me from another radio station where I speak to her off air, and will probably be mildly horrified at the lack of professionalism I display on this station. But let's not dwell on that too much.
Yes. Straight out. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 12 o'clock handicap stakes from Kempton Park. It's Michael Verby and the colours of Malcolm and Anita Verby there. Good afternoon, gents. Linda Dave. No relation to Phil Dave, except it's his mum. Hey, guys. Happy Wednesday. And crazy name. Crazy gal. Eve. Phantom. Now, before I say anything else, and we go on to our very special guest, which I'm so excited about because I'm a big fan. Yesterday was a horrible day because we lost Charlie Watts. Now, it may not mean a lot to you if you're of a certain age. To me, it's the absolute end of an era. He was my drumming hero. Of course, he was the drummer for the Rolling Stones. Joined the band in 1963. He was always my favorite member of the band. Elegant, a magnificent drummer. And what he did was make it look so deceptively easy. What he was doing was very difficult, but he made it look wonderfully easy. He had a 1960s Gretsch kit, the most simple kit you could get, cymbals that he wanted because that sound from the 60s, never changed it. No pyrotechnics, no stupid roller coaster like that twerp. Tommy Lee was a terrible drummer from Motley Crue. He was wonderful, and to lose him, it upset me enormously, and it still upsets me. I find it really difficult. It makes me feel horribly mortal. It really does. We lost another great chap yesterday. I'm not going to go into it now, but a very well-known photographer who must have photographed me hundreds and hundreds of times at every possible occasion over the years, especially during my Capital Radio years, and we lost it. It was a rough day yesterday. And the Charlie Watts thing's really cast a cloud over me. I know it's stupid, and I can't. And the thing about it, Phil, is I can't rationalize it. I never met the guy. I spent a day in a studio. I never spoke to him when I was a kid, but I've never, met him. I didn't know him. He wouldn't know of my existence, but I knew of him and had admired him for so many years. Since I was 9 or 10 years old. He was my drumming hero.
The thing is, though, that we often bring this up whenever someone well-known dies that we admired or thought something highly of, and they are suddenly no longer around. We ask, why do we feel that sense of mourning? And I am a great believer that it's because you're actually mourning a part of your life that's gone. So even though you don't know the individual, they were very much a part of your life because of the contribution they made to it without even knowing. So actually, what I think you're mourning is probably the fact that that's now gone from your life.
I agree with you.
You're mourning the individual. I think you're mourning their contribution.
You're absolutely right. And the other interesting thing, one day we must do a show about it, is that if it's somebody that doesn't affect you or you weren't a fan of, I go, well, that's sad. Like when George Michael went, I know so many people were so upset, and I went, Well, I liked his stuff with Wham, but I thought the rest of it was sort of self-indulgent and pretty dirge-like. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I know millions of people were distraught when he died. I got upset when Dusty Hill died from ZZ Top because I liked that. When Bob Dylan goes, I don't know, Bob Dylan's 80 plus now. You know, I know everyone thinks he's God, and for me, it's like, well, you know, I like some of his stuff. Am I going to get into a whole depression about it? No, even though I've known his again since I was 9. You know, so that won't affect me. Other people will be absolutely distraught. I totally understand that. When we lost Neil Peart from Rush, arguably the best rock drummer after Charlie Watts, very different styles. He died of brain cancer last year, in his early 60s. I got really upset. Other people have probably never heard of him. It's what matters to you, and it's another line drawn through something that mattered in your life. I think that's what it's about. I think you summed it up very well, Philip, if I may say so. Emma Webb, good afternoon. Hello, Lady Weaver. That's to come. I feel that is probably going to come.
That could be the perfect time
I think so.
To say indeed. Hello, Lady Weaver, also known as Jackie Weaver. Jackie.
Hello there. Now, you'll have to forgive me. I have been helping myself liberally to the contents of the green room.
Well, you do know what? That's what it's there for.
You did explain we're on a tight budget, Phil.
I didn't eat the food. I just drank the drink.
Well, I knew you'd like. It was a 63 Petrus, and I thought, I know it's a little early, but you know, if we can't make you welcome, what is the point?
I do have to say, Jackie, that's precisely why I have huge admiration for you. Can I just make a point, though, that sort of that I as I mentioned, sort of that I do sort of work with you in other radio stations as well. But I should point out that I've got a theory. You know how everyone's got the conspiracy theory that COVID was deliberately started somehow. I wonder whether or not it was actually by all media companies that all clubbed together, because so much money has been saved on hospitality in the media sector since COVID came along, when everyone is working from home. I can't help but think that there is a plus point to this after all for some people. But anyway, it's just a thought. Anyway.
I think you may have a point. I mean, certainly in you know, my little organisation, you know, you are struggling to find real positives from COVID. I get that.
Yes.
But really, we have not spent a vast amount of money last year on room hire, on, when I say refreshments, we're talking about a cup of tea and coffee. But if you're doing that for 30 people, small organisation,
sure, over
the year makes a big difference. And the question is, will we go back to it?
No, I don't think we will. I don't think we will, Jackie.
Well, no, there's a part of me that really hopes we do, but I sadly somehow doubt it. But anyway,
I don't think so. Now, Jackie, thank you so much for finding time in your schedule to join us. Much appreciated. How did it? There you are, minding your own business, and suddenly, literally overnight, you become a sensation, and you just light the blue touch paper with what goes on. How did that feel, and how did you cope with it?
How did it feel? Unreal. I mean, I think that's the only way to describe it. I mean, I had somebody text me, I think it was, and said something like, "You're trending number 3 in the country." And there comes a point where actually ignorance is bliss, because it means absolutely nothing to me. So I have no point of reference for what they're saying. So I do that thing where, you know how we do when we've not got a clue what the other person said. You have that kind of awkward laugh and move on because you haven't got a clue what they're talking about. And then a bit later, they text me again to say, "You're trending number 1 now." And you know, again, that's nice. Okay, time to go to bed. And it wasn't until the following morning when there was literally a queue of media outside the front door.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice journalist, you know, gentle knock on the door, you know, very polite. Wow. You know, I wonder if you'd mind talking to us about, you know,
Jackie,
the handful
sure
story.
They were a journalist, because you said they were very polite.
Oh, they were. And they formed an orderly queue.
Because they were scared of you. They were scared.
Is there
I thought it was so funny.
What's gone on? Is there any part of you that's annoyed by what's gone on? Because as Russ said, you were just going about your daily business, and then as if sort of without much control, you've been thrust into this very strange world where now you're regular guest on sort of various programs and contributor, and it's, without being rude, it's almost like suddenly your opinion matters. And I wonder how that feels.
Well, I guess first of all, I do have control. Because I can say no. I just don't say no. But you know, and perhaps that's one of the coping mechanisms I have, where I say I can always say no. And I say, you know, further to that previous comment, I can't tell you how nice people have been. You know, I mean, everybody that I've kind of engaged with on the media has, okay, we've told the story, we've had some fun with it, but they've also allowed me to sort of take a few minutes and talk about what I really want to talk about, which is town and parish councils and the impact they have on people's lives. And that is such an opportunity. You know, I mean, we've been trying to get some kind of traction for many years, you know, to get the media interested in what's happening in local councils, and it doesn't happen.
No.
You know, so even though it started in a kind of dark place, actually you know, I think we've turned it around. I think we have generated some genuine interest in local councils.
Original footage. No, I respect, like everybody else. We'd never heard of you. I didn't know that. You know, what did I know about parish councils? Very, very little. Probably write it on the back of a postage stamp. It was quite astounding, because if you take away the sort of this is an absolute plot line for Midsummer Murders. I mean, this is an absolute shoo-in. Well, you're just waiting for Inspector Barnaby to turn up and start looking at the body count. But what was for me fascinating was it was an insight into a world that we knew very little about, and the passion and the because you only get that angry if you're passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise you'd walk away or shrug or something like that. And the passion that was throughout with all those attendees was quite extraordinary. I mean, was that a normal type of meeting? I know it got very heated, but do they often get that heated and people that passionate?
I think there's two levels, and you know, if anybody ever talks to me about going into local democracy, local politics, I do warn them. You know, you are likely to come across robust debate, I think we call it, and you know, you are going to have to argue your point. And you need to stand up for yourself and explain, you know, why you, a bit like, you know, debating at school or university. That will be part of your kind of job as a counsellor. But then you saw what you did coming out of Handforth, and that was, I mean, for me, that was completely unexpected. I mean, often people say, "You're wonderfully calm. How did you do it?"
You were.
I think I was in shock.
But you were so. What was fascinating from a mental health aspect is this was serious abuse. I mean, this was a volatile, unpleasant situation. Let's be honest. Joking aside, forget all the memes. It was a nasty situation, and you could have reacted, and you would have been like another match to the pile of petrol, or you did what you did, which was you were placid. You were in control. Now, are you putting that down seriously, that you were like so shocked you didn't know what to say, or is that your nature?
No, I think that is my nature. I mean, one of the aspects of my job is that I look after, with a small team, over 200 parish councils in Cheshire. And they never ring me up or they never get in touch with us to say, "I just thought I'd let you know we're having a fabulous day." The only time they get in touch is when something's wrong. And often, you know, you're dealing with a lone, you know, somebody who works alone, somebody who's brewed on this problem until it's now, you know, life-threatening almost. And, you know, I kind of feel that part of my job is to give them reassurance that, okay, they might have made a mess of it, but we can fix it.
You know, I feel like that the parish council is, well, first and foremost, as you rightly sort of say, that for a long time it sort of disappeared from our minds, rightly or wrongly. And the only time I sort of recall in recent memory of any sort of regular knowledge of a parish council setup, and this is going to sound really trivial, but it's kind of true because this is how hidden it's been, has been the Vicar of Dibley. You may recall sort of like from the Vicar of Dibley, there were always great comic scenes in that show that featured the parish council. But this must hopefully have done sort of something in the term of wonders to actually sort of demonstrate the importance of local authority.
I mean, the Vicar of Dibley was hugely funny. No question about it. But it's not a parish council. I mean, I think that's the kind of starting point. It's a PCC, a parochial church council. I mean, years later, years later, I was still getting people saying to me, "Do we have to have the vicar as chairman?" Well, yes, if you're a PCC, but not if you're a parish council.
No, but that's really interesting though, because they always referred to it in the programme as the Dibley Parish Council. So that's really interesting that you said that. I think there are a lot of people would have been misled by that. But can I ask, you were saying just now about the staying calm. It is funny actually sort of how when one is in a situation that they don't expect, because let's not forget, of course, that sort of the video that you went viral in, it must have been unpleasant to be on the receiving end of that, even if it was over Zoom. I was actually sort of in a Northwest London shopping centre yesterday, and I had some chap who I'll bore people with the details later when we let you go and get about your business. But let's just say he misunderstood something that I was actually sort of looking in the art to make sure I got the right art. He thought I was staring him out, and then promptly started shouting at me right in front of the supermarket, properly laying into me. And I did manage to maintain relatively calm, but believe me, deep down inside, I just wanted to chuck a bag of rice over him. But at the same time, I just... Russ laughs because he thinks I wind people up wherever I go. I don't mean to. I really don't mean to wind people up. Apparently, he thinks I wind people up wherever I go. But anyway.
You're like a magnet for trouble, Phil. You're a magnet for trouble.
So that happened yesterday, but I was quite sort of relatively shocked at how calm I managed to stay. And I think that sort of no one necessarily does know until they're in that kind of situation how you're going to react. But it is funny how sort of deep down we have this sort of subconscious ability, I suppose, to remain calm if we have to.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my son, funnily enough, the other day there about something similar. I remember an article about your this is so depressing. Your chances of getting out of an aircraft alive in a crash, depending on what type of person was sitting where. And they kind of classified people into, I can't remember the details, but that there are people who calmly take charge. There are people who are so panicked they're like rabbits in a headlight and can't do anything. They're just solid stuck, And of course, if they're by the entrance, we've got a problem.
Just a bit, yes.
Yeah, and there are other people who literally run around like headless chickens, kind of screaming. And it's about how people react to stress,
Jackie,
to that kind of environment.
May I give you some advice, if I may be so bold? Never sit next to Phil Dave on a plane, because if anything, God forbid, no, I explain why. He'll go, oh, hang on, I've just got to get my hat. Is my tie straight? No, I'm going to put on a cravat. I don't know these people outside. Shall I change my jacket? I could have blown up by then. Seriously,
I have a lot of sympathy. My husband is very similar. So my husband would be the one who at that point was getting the emergency brochure out from the back of the seat to follow the instructions properly.
Now, look, if I am going to go down, I would insist that, that I might sort of do it in style. That's all.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep, fair enough.
Now, there's a very good question here, Jackie, if you don't mind. It's from a lady called Glassy Amanda. Her name's actually Amanda Glass, who's in the psychotherapeutic community, which is where we kind of inhabit. And it's something that I'd never thought. Who posted the video that went viral, and was that legal? Interesting point.
I've been interviewed with two of them. It's a young man called Sean Ali, and I'm afraid I can't remember his partner's name, Justine, but don't quote me on that. And he's a politics student down south somewhere. And they have a politics group where they meet up monthly and, talk about things that might be of interest. So he does spend quite a lot of time cruising the internet looking for interesting things about parish councils or principal authorities, not just parish councils, that they might like to talk about in their discussion group. Now, parish council meetings at the time were taking place virtually. In fact, wasn't everything taking place virtually?
Yes, yeah.
The format for that is that you can record the meeting. Not every council does, and then it's posted on the Facebook website, Facebook page of the council. So it was out there in the public domain, and he picked it up, and it was his partner, the young lady, who actually condensed it into, and it's not kind of like the best bits stitched together, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like the first 5 minutes. Some people think that maybe it's kind of, it was spread out over a much longer period of time and stitched together. That wasn't the case. So she took the first 5 minutes, and that was what was uploaded.
And that was the first 5 minutes. I'd have been a wreck.
Yeah.
It
all happened very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah, and not only that, but there was 2 meetings. So that happened in the first meeting. So they were put in the waiting room. It followed exactly the same way, and then we came to the second meeting, and I'm thinking, right, where are we going to go now? Because surely they will have learned that the first tactic didn't work. So what are they going to try now? No, they did exactly the same thing.
Oh, well, do you know what they say, Jackie? Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Well, even with short-term memory loss, they should have remembered it. It was only 30 minutes before.
Has there been an uptake in interest?
Exploded on the video. The guy who sort of lost his rag on the. Have you spoken to him since?
No, he has sent me a couple of unkind emails, and he has resigned from the. He has resigned from the council. And then they're quite unrepentant. The chairman was as well. They felt that they had been, I can't remember his word, forced, badgered, that kind of thing, into the unfortunate way in which he reacted.
Okay. Well, I mean, in the absence of, we take your word for it, but still, at the same time, I was just out of curiosity.
Has there been an uptake in interest in this level of politics now?
Yes. We saw that at the. Of course, we had elections for some in May, and we definitely saw more uptake. Now, part of it might have been because of the viral video, but I think there's also something there about. The fact that meetings have gone online, were online, they're not currently. And I think that was a real opportunity for people to peek behind the curtains in the safety of their own home. It's not, I think parish council meetings are quite intimidating if you don't know the players. You're going to walk into a town hall or a village hall or something, you know the scenario, all eyes are going to turn towards you. And if you're anything like me, at that point, you'll lose the ability to walk in a straight line. So people now think you're drunk. And, you kind of feel, why am I here? They're going to challenge me or whatever. So, the fact that you can dip into a virtual meeting was fantastic. People could actually look and see what was happening in their local area.
With a wider question here, one of the things which has affected people's mental health, without doubt, through the last 18, 19 months, is that we've lost our control, because this was an enemy that we were fighting that we couldn't see. And then our civil liberties and everything, we had to stay at home. I mean, you know the story. I don't need to reiterate it. So I'm wondering if, and it's not too much of a stretch, if local politics is a way of us getting some control back of our lives, bit by bit, because we don't seem to be able to affect what happens in Westminster. It's done and dusted, and we haven't got a hope. So at local level, perhaps. I mean,
that's a real theme of what I've been talking about over the last 6 months. I think that one of the reasons that people have become it's been around for a while, disenfranchised with politics generally, is that they feel they can't influence the world and they can't influence the nation. We keep trying to say to them, oh, yes, you can. Your vote counts. Does it heck? You really can't influence these things. But at local level, you really can make a difference, and you can make a difference in your lifetime. You're not going to have to wait generations before you see any change.
When do you think it changed, Jackie? Because, you know, when I was growing up, you believed in, you know, the state, you believed in the police, you believed in politicians. It was all rather grand and they all seemed rather special. And then suddenly it was as though the you know, the veil was lifted from our eyes and we just think, oh, they're all terrible. There seemed to be like a complete sea change there. And that's why I think that's why a lot of people are lost, quite angry, which we'll talk about that later, Phil. And just don't feel have any control over their lives at all, which is why I think libertarianism has become understandable.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if part of that is due to the fact that the information is so much more accessible these days. You know, so in a way, and I'm not particularly an advocate for the police, but every time a policeman puts a foot wrong, plastered all over the news. So those bad news stories become the norm, so that after a while you begin to think, well, the police are incompetent because that's the only kind of story we ever hear. And I think for me, there's also something around more and more we're being told two things. One, that we are special. You know, each individual is special. And secondly, we are more important than everything else. And I think that, you know, once we kind of grow generations that believe that, then I think that we're really taking away that sense of community, sense of wanting to help other people. I think that's a problem.
It's so interesting.
I can't tell you how much I have banged on about that. Sort of whenever I get the opportunity, I'm very fortunate that I have a platform in the world of radio that I do say frequently what my opinion is. And that I couldn't agree with you more. I can't understand sort of how now that we are reeling from teaching successive generations, you can do whatever you want to in this world. You can be whoever you want to be. And you are the most important being. It's just ridiculous. It's almost saying nothing bad will ever happen to you. Don't worry, they're there. And it's ridiculous. It's not true.
I mean, it's one of the things that I pick up in my book, because I think, you know, it's you know, I call it a little book of common sense. I think that the pressure we put on young people by telling them that they are special, therefore go be special. And then secondly, what we say to young women about the ability to have it all puts enormous pressure on them. And, you know, I think they use the example, you know, if you want to build a house, the last thing you want are unique bricks. You need them to be the same. Community works better when people are similar. You know, I'm not saying that we are all clones of each other. But, you know, we have more in common.
Work together.
Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
to work together. Michael Verby, who's listening and watching in Spain, says everyone feels entitled. This word. It's perfect, Michael. Thank you. This word entitled, you're not entitled. It doesn't say anywhere, one, life is fair. Two, it never says you can have it all. It's down to you. You've got to work for it. You can't just be given it. It's just, you're not entitled to it.
Except that's not the message, is it? I mean,
it isn't.
we're constantly being told. You know, I mean, take the adverts. You know, adverts are exactly the same. You can have it all, and you are special. You are unique.
Yeah. No, yes, this is the book. You do have the authority here. Tell us more about the book. How fantastic! Congratulations, by the way. How lovely.
Thank you. It's well, I was approached and asked, you know, would you like to write a book? And I thought, what on earth would I write a book about? You know, I mean, I could write a book about parish councils, but I'm not sure that it would be a huge seller.
Market. No.
Yeah, quite. And I thought, what would I really, if I wanted to talk to a lot of people, what would I want to say to them? And I guess that's what's in the book. And I would have liked to have called it a little book of common sense.
Yes, lovely. That could be a book too.
Yeah, well. And it is picking up sort of like that theme that we just had a moment ago, about, it's absolutely fine to be ordinary. That's, ordinary isn't a failure,
It's just getting on and minding your own business with life. That's what's kind of you're not allowed to do.
Yeah. Another piece that I got in there is, debunking you always hurt the one you love. Really? What do you do to people you don't like?
I have a problem with the Friedrich Nietzsche phrase, that which does not kill you makes you strong. And I've thought, no, that which does not kill you gives you one hell of a fright and probably scars you for life.
Yeah, but these kind of statements we never challenge. We stick them on fridge magnets and worship them.
I know, it is nuts. The book's out now, isn't it? It is.
No, it's available on pre-order at the moment on Amazon, and it's formally released on the 16th of September.
Now, the big question for the 16th of September, do Phil and I need to wear a suit to the launch party, or is it smart casual?
I would go for full dress, frankly.
All right, Phil, that's tuxedos.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you down.
Do you know there is one slight snag? In case you hadn't gathered, there is some distance between Jackie and where we are now. But other than that,
Phil, I'm going to mention 2 words to you, and that distance will shrink. Are you ready? Free buffet.
I'll be there.
Suddenly he'll be in the car. He'll be in the car in 20 minutes. He'll be there. How wonderful, Jackie! Thank you so much for joining us.
I
don't want to take up too much of your time.
Absolute pleasure.
Congratulations on the book. Thank you for bringing the fresh air of sanity back into what seems like a bonkers world. You have more admirers than you will know.
Oh,
and you sum up.
Sorry, quick plug. Tell us about the podcast.
Oh yes, podcast as well. And again, that was one of those I didn't say no to. And a lovely young man said, "Would you like to do a podcast?" I have no idea what a podcast is. In fact, I'd done 10 before he mentioned that they are just audio.
They're just an audio.
So,
and what's that?
Here I am, total face made up. Absolutely looking fabulous. And then he tells me it's audio only. And I'm again amazed at how kind people have been. I can't think of a better word. When people who I think, are stars in their own right, they don't need me for anything, have agreed to come and spend half an hour with me chatting about serious questions like.
You've got some great names associated with it. Anton Dubek, Reverend Kate, Jeremy Vine. Good God, you've even managed to get Jay Rayner on there. Well, that is nothing to be sniffed at. Good grief. Jay is lovely, by the way. He will never admit it, but he is a nice chap. So.
And really, we're kind of it's almost like answering fairly daft questions, but often there's a hint of seriousness and putting the world to rights in there as well.
Brilliant.
Well, there you go.
It's well deserved. Well deserved, Miss. I really mean that. I think it's fantastic. Bravo. Thank you so much for joining us, Jackie. Really appreciate
Absolute pleasure.
Okay.
See you soon, hopefully. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
There we go.
Great. Everything that I hoped that Jackie would be, and even more. What a lovely, lovely person.
Jackie, Jackie is terrific. I'm very, very lucky to say that I've worked with her through other radio work, and she is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the nicest, most obliging people. And I'm not just saying that because she's still in the digital green room.
No, she's charming.
I wouldn't say to her face, I promise you.
So interesting. Jackie is the embodiment of what is so much of what is just missing. And she used 2 words that if we could apply them, Phil, the world would be a happier, safer, better place. And those words are common sense. And I want to talk to you about what happened to you, because it's weird you should mention what happened to you in the shopping centre yesterday. I write an article for a newspaper regularly, every 2 weeks. And my article yesterday, I didn't know what I was going to write about. And I just sat down, I started to bang out the words. And it was all about anger. By pure chance, I didn't know you'd had this experience yesterday. It was all about anger. And, if people dealt with anger the way that Jackie Weaver did at that crazy meeting where people were being so abusive. If you've never seen the video, on the one hand, it's hilarious. And on the other hand, it's deeply, deeply disturbing. It is both simultaneously. Because you think these are, I'm going to use the word, ordinary run-of-the-mill people, you know, doing ordinary life. And they suddenly go insane. Insane. And you realize the point I'm making, there is a boiling furore of anger that so many people are walking around with. And that was what my article was about. Why are people so crazy angry? I don't know if you saw the message from Paul Claridge. More violence. More violence. Now, you know, we muck about with Paul Claridge on the show, you know, about East Croydon up the ladder with Eastern European drug gangs chasing him, etc. More horrendous violence.
I have got a theory about why people are so angry, you know. And actually, I think it's something that Jack touched upon. And that is that despite living in a world where so many people have got a voice and can express their opinion, it's almost as if no one's opinion counts. And I think that's why people are angry, is because they're heard, but they're not listened to. Do you see what I mean? So in other words, people can be vocal on social media if they want to, but whatever their frustrations in life are, it's not changed. There's nothing that can be done about it, but there probably is, but there's nothing being done about it. And I suppose for want of a better term, they almost feel neglected. So for example, I've made it no hidden secret how wound up I get about the state of the lending system in this country, meaning that I still, at the age of 35, live at home. Now, before anyone says anything, yes, I'm perfectly aware I could rent if I want to, so I don't need to go down that particular route again. But the point is that I don't want to rent. I'd like to be like generations before me, and I would like to purchase my own home, invest in my future, and make sure I have something solid to my name, an asset to my name that will ultimately protect my world, you know, further down the line if I'm lucky enough to get there. But that annoys me. And yet, despite the number of people who talk about it, the amount of media coverage it gets, nothing gets changed. Nothing gets done about it. So that's what annoys me. But there are loads of people who are in a similar situation, just expressing their opinion of what means something to their world. And in a developed country such as the UK, to have so many people feel so neglected, I think is a shocking indictment on many levels. Number one, it means we're all so spoiled that we think this is the worst the world gets. And number two, being so developed and being so democratic, how on earth can we feel like this?
Some interesting comments coming in. Richard Todd, Jackie has been involved with my local town councils. They're mainly run by a bunch of clowns. a meeting held in early August.
Ended in a
punch-up between two councillors.
Great.
I mean, what is the matter with people? What is worth getting involved in a violent what? They're not invading your country, for God's sake. It's just weird. And then Ramsey says, now what is going on? Apologies for just joining. Since OnlyFans threw me off their platform, I don't know if you're being serious or joking. I don't know what that is. I've been taking HGV driving lessons. There are driving jobs at McDonald's and Nando's. Is that a gag? I don't know. Are you serious, Ramsey? I have no idea.
I suspect that is sartorial humor based on sort of the content of that, but I can't be sure. Ramsey, I hope that you are kidding about being a Anyway, let's move on. Luke Newman says, good afternoon, gents. I've just received, I'll explain off air, Russ. Good afternoon, gents. I've just received great news. The Mental Health Moles book has been accepted in 2 independent bookshops.
Fantastic. Well done, Luke.
Bravo.
If you remember that Luke was our guest a couple of Fridays back, he'd sent me a PDF he reached out to me. I said, send me a PDF of the book. And I just read the first few frames. I said, this is great. It's a wonderful film. The Mental Health Moles book. It's great. Well done, Luke.
Am I allowed to go into some sort of detail as to what happened yesterday? Because I figured I was trying to gloss over it with Jackie just because I didn't
want to take up her time. Yes. No, go ahead.
In a nutshell, I was in a particular shopping centre, and further to that, a well-known supermarket within that shopping centre.
Does it begin with M or begin with W?
The reason why I was in the supermarket beginning with W is because I was trying to find a particular product and I wasn't sure which aisle I would find it in. However, I did what any level-headed individual would do who's far too proud to ask someone for
God
help.
forbid.
I started looking down each of the aisles to try and see if I could see from the end of the aisle. At the end of the aisle, I wasn't going to go and waste my time walking up and down it. At the end of the aisle, I was looking to see whether or not I could find the product. Exactly, that's the one. That's it. Hey, see, to anyone who is not watching this, anyone who's listening to this, I should point out that Russ is doing the impression of someone who has unfortunately seen someone they don't want to see for a very long time and decides to hide around the corner to make 100% sure it is actually them. But they're doing this sort of the face where they extend their neck thinking they're suddenly made out of paste and flour or something that they can stretch their neck without being seen. Anyway, the point is that I was looking down this particular aisle to see whether or not I could find the product I was after. There was a chap who was standing in the middle of it. Now, I wasn't completely sure what it was he was doing, but he was obviously dreadfully self-conscious because he was standing in the middle and seemingly waiting for me to do something. Now, I've no fucking idea what it was. But anyway, all I know is that he sort of...
Phil, you wonder why online shopping is so successful.
Well, quite. Now, I should point out that this chap, although he worked in said shopping centre for one of the other shops, he did not work for the shop in question. That's really important for me to stress that. But anyway, what happened was he was wearing the uniform of this other shop that he was in, and he's standing there looking completely and utterly moronic, not wearing a face mask, I hasten to add. And then eventually he sort of said to me after about what felt like an eternity, he said, "Come on." And I said, I beg your pardon. He said, "Come on." He said, "You're staring at me. What's your problem?" And I just looked at him very calmly and I said, "I assure you, I have considerably better things to be staring at." So I then walked away.
Can you say that line again? It was too good to just say once. Go on.
I said,
like, "Come on then. Come on."
Him and I said, "I assure you, I have considerably better things to be staring at." So I walked away.
You're either brave or mad. I don't know which one it is.
Possibly mad. But anyway, I started to walk away and he said, "What did you say?" Of course, I said, "I beg your pardon." He said, "What did you say?" So I said, "Can I remind you that you are in the uniform of your employer? So before you start with me, make no mistake, if you do continue, I will have no hesitation in reporting you if you really think it is worth it." And so he said, "Don't bother me." And I said, "No, I suspect it doesn't." And I walked off. But anyway. So
Part two after the break, where Phil takes out a gun.
But I just thought to myself,
what's the matter with this guy? What was the problem with the fella?
Well, I mean, he was clearly utterly insecure about himself. But to be honest with you, if I look like that,
problem, is it?
But the point is that I couldn't understand for the life of me why it was that all I was doing was looking down the aisle. I was looking to see what there was there. Hold that thought 2 seconds. I'm just going to shut that noise up.
What is that extraordinary noise? Richard Todd, I kid you not. Do you recall a couple of weeks back when I told you about the ongoing harassment of my wife? I do. Well, during one council meeting, my wife was slandered by a supposed member of the public, although we suspect she was a plant by the local Labour loonies. She had cause to contact Jackie Weaver over this. Jackie advised our town council to distance themselves from this comment, yet the leader of the local Labour party decided to go on the local press, completely ignoring Jackie, and that's all I've got because it's all that comes up on my screen.
Hang on a second, I should call up the rest of it right now if you hold that for 2 seconds.
Of course I will, caller. Thank you. Your call's important to us.
Whilst I am calling up the rest of it, I just thought it's absolutely ludicrous. Why on earth would it be that all I was innocently doing was looking down the aisle to see what there was there?
Do you realise, and also I'm going to be absolutely serious with you now, so this is not one of my gags. This is where you go wrong. This is where we go wrong. You're trying to deal with lunatics. You're trying to apply normal logic. You're trying to have a conversation like we do with people all over the world who tune into the show and women's radio as well. To have a normal conversation like grown-ups do. but you're not dealing with rational. You might as well be talking to a light bulb. There's no point.
Yeah, no desire to converse with him. I wouldn't even expectorate if he suddenly combusted. But
I don't know what that means, but okay. You mean you want we on him?
I wouldn't. Some people call it spitting. Anyway, the point is that I wouldn't even dream of it if he caught fire. It was just, what a horrible individual. It's not the kind of.
He was nuts. Yeah, but there's a load of people who are completely bonkers, and you're trying to have a rational thing, and you think, why is there so much horrific anger? Do you want to read the rest of Richard Todd's comment?
How much worse does it have to get before we do actually find ourselves in a situation where people realize that it's irrational thinking? Anyway, I don't think we will. Anyway, the point is, sorry, the rest of Richard's comments, sorry, I do apologize. So yes, so you got up to the point where completely ignoring Jackie and CHALC's advice. Not sure what that is. I apologize. She may have the authority, but people still aren't listening. So there you go.
And Richard Todd also says, and I extend my argument that I've just said to Phil. If you ever want to have an argument, just post something on Twitter. And I had to write I've been writing a lot of articles recently. And one of the things is like, I will not engage. It's terrible for my mental health. Terrible. I can start the day off feeling really good, and I check Twitter to see if I need to reply to anything. And of course, I'm promoting the radio stations. I spend a lot of time doing that on the social media. CHALC is Cheshire Association of Local Councils. Thank you, Richard Todd, for that.
Can I point out as well, actually, the reason why I believe that sort of social media is so dreadful when it comes to mental health, when you see an argument on there, is, and I was trying to think about this because I too get very badly affected. You know, there was a sort of period not so long ago, which, to be honest, is still sort of affects me to the point where I don't really engage in anything political on social media anymore. But it got me so much that I just came off social media for a while. I couldn't be bothered with it. But I realized the reason why is it's so terrible. It's on many different levels. Number one is because, of course, the one we know about, the keyboard warriors. So those who can hide behind their brave keyboard where they don't get seen, they don't have to give their real name. They can just be cowardly and make comments that are so unbelievably hurtful that they wouldn't dream of saying if they were to face you in real life, because just the nature of what they are like. That's one element. But I think the other element of it is that because words can be taken so easily out of context, when it's written down, you can't understand the way in which the other person is saying. So in something, if someone was to say something, is it not inclination? What's the word?
It's a tone.
For want of a better term, it is the tone. You can't tell the tone by something that is written. And unfortunately, the imagination is cruel. And more often than not, people will think that the written word is an angry word when it's not necessarily at all.
Well, I never write anything unless I was happy if it was read out in court. That is my golden rule. I won't send an email or a tweet or a Facebook post. If it can be read out in court, I'll write it. Okay. But you've got to know the person. So yes, the intonation. Thanks, Michael Verby. Intonation. Here's the thing.
Thank you.
Yesterday we were talking. I did a jokey thing about can you see what's wrong with this picture on Facebook? And it was someone looking into the steaming engine of a Volkswagen Beetle at the front. Well, of course, there's no engine at the front. That's the gag, right? So loads of people came in, and then David Wimble and other people said, "Oh, VW Beetle, blah blah blah. It's just a Porsche." No, that's my favorite car, and it's just a Porsche 911. And I said, "You're dead to me, Wimble." Now, I can do that because I know David Wimble. I wouldn't do that to someone I didn't know in case they thought I was actually being... And he came out, harsh. And I just did something else. If you know somebody, they know your tone. They know your intonation, to use Michael's phrase. But if you don't know somebody and you do that, you go, well, I was joking. How are they supposed to know? Unless it's obvious. But to most people, so ready to take offense over everything and anything. Just get careful. Chrissy Holt, it's a good job I'm in Spain. You got yourself sorted now, Chrissy. You were sending messages that all sounded dire, but now you seem okay. I got so angry when my daughter told me she had a bill for £99.50 from the shop where two security guards held her down and badly bruised her for lost sales. Chrissy, you are being ridiculous. What? They charged your daughter 100 quid for lost sales? They can't do that. It's not legal. Take them to court. It's not legal. Go to the small claims court. Go to your citizens advice. No, it's your daughter. I'm so sorry. Tell your daughter to go to the Citizens Advice Bureau, to phone the local council, phone the local trade regulation. That's not legal. No way. Am I wrong, Phil?
I confess I don't know the law to that degree. I wouldn't have thought it was, from what I understand about it, because I wouldn't have thought that was much of a defense, but who knows? But it is definitely worth seeking legal advice on that from people who are clearly more in the know than Russ or I could ever be. But please,
don't want to misadvise you, but yes, it is absolutely worth tell your daughter to get some advice, and it's free advice there. Richard Todd, what does Richard say? There's so many talented people. Go on, read out Richard's thing, if you'd be so kind.
Richard says that there are so many talented people on social media. They can judge you. You know, they know exactly what you think, what you are like, what your political beliefs are, what your beliefs are on racism,
of course,
what your beliefs on sexuality are, etc. Just by one post.
Of course, they are geniuses. And it's the same people who are political geniuses. They are medical geniuses, of course, and they're geniuses on the law. The fact that they're a hairdresser from Stoke-on-Trent, it's irrelevant. They know everything about everything.
Do you think we just sound like, I'm being deadly serious, are we just fighting against the tide?
Yes. Yes.
No, but when I say that we fight, do we just sound like grumpy old men who want to live in the past, or should we roll with it? Would we be happier if we rolled with the times?
We could talk about this for 3 hours, and that's a fantastic question. I speak to my mate Larry Viner about this a lot. We rail against it. It's not a world I recognize. It's not a world I like. I don't want to be part of it. Are we fighting a losing battle? Yes. Because I'll be gone. You've got many years, but I'll be gone. My contemporaries will be gone. I'm losing my contemporaries now. And the younger people coming up believe all this horse shit. And that's the world that we are leaving behind, because we didn't fight the battle when we had the chance. That's why we feel so marginalized. That's why people like Michael Verby go to Spain and go, phew, thank God I'm not in that cesspit. I can just sit here, look at the sunshine, have a coffee, and hang about. That's why Chrissy Holt's out in Spain. That's why other people, I get it. That's the world we're leaving behind us.
Michael Verby, like King Canute. Look, I do have to say that I am a great believer that the people with the smallest opinion make the loudest noise. But what I fear is that loudest noise could be the biggest influence. That's what really worries me. Is although I do believe that we still, by and large, live in a world that is quite level-headed and doesn't believe that everything is delicate and that everyone has to be patted on the head.
I don't agree with you. I don't agree, Phil. I think it's past.
No. I do believe it. I promise you I do. But I think the problem is those with the loudest voice.
Empty vessels make the loudest noise. Empty vessels make the loudest noise. An incredibly old saying, and more true now than ever. Let me just say this. It's very controversial. I'm not making a point about the subject. I'm using it as an example. That's all I'm doing. Okay? Statistically, if you talk about transgender, I'm not getting into if you like it, if you don't like it, if you support it, if you don't understand, it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking about. If you get onto the subject of transgender, if you follow the media narrative, it looks like 1 in 3 people have decided they're the wrong sex. They were born the wrong sex and want to be a man, or they want to be a woman, or whatever you want to call it. Statistically, that's nonsense. I don't believe, and no one has shown figures, that there's millions and millions of people walking around the UK thinking they're in the wrong body. I'm not even convinced there's hundreds of thousands of it. But if you listen to the media, that's the way it's portrayed. I'm using that only as an example. I'm not getting into that debate. I really don't want to. Not for me. Thank you. Got other things to worry about. It's just not for me. So I think that's what you're saying. The way that it can be completely skewed. You see what I'm saying, Phil? You take a subject and it's disproportionately represented.
Yeah.
Because, to bring it full circle, the Jackie Weavers of the world who are brave enough, and suddenly that's why she's become so well known and so liked and so admired, because she represents some semblance of normality and common sense. And not in a hysterical, hectoring way, in a very calm, logical, quiet, mature way, which is the way we should be conducting ourselves, not screaming at each other. Look at Richard Todd's post. I mean, this is a wonderful little encapsulation of life. Do you want to read this?
Here's another local council gem for you from our town council. The two councillors that had a punch up, one who is in his 40s, has mental health issues and couldn't be interviewed about the assault by the police without an appropriate adult being present. Fair enough, I understand that, but why? Oh, why is he allowed to stand and be elected for council? Scary thought. Well, I mean, this is a massive argument that I have, and I don't think that one can turn around and say, why is he allowed to stand for council? Because then you're saying that just because someone's mentally ill that they're not fit for council, which even if that is the case, it's probably not the world in which we want to live in, because then you're sort of deliberately sort of pigeonholing somebody and just sort of saying, well, they're no good, because then where does it stop? But at the end, turn around and say, well, somebody has some certain religious beliefs and therefore they're no good for council. Do you see what I mean? So I think that that's a bit of a thin ice sheet to walk on. But what I would say is that with equality, it's got to be a two-way street. So when people want to be treated as equal, you cannot turn around and say that just because somebody has a health issue, that they are not allowed to be interviewed by police. If they are of a sound enough mind to commit a crime, then they're of a sound enough mind to be treated like a criminal. That's just the truth. That has got to be the way.
Whoa, hang on. So if somebody is really mentally ill and they commit a crime, they may not be aware of what, I don't think they're aware fully of what they're doing. If you're standing in a parish council meeting,
yes,
presumably, I'm guessing here, I don't know, you have the wherewithal to be able to debate whatever is on the agenda, which might be quite complicated stuff.
Now, if someone is, quote, seriously mentally ill, then maybe that might be your defense, but it does not mean they shouldn't be interviewed by police. It should not mean that they're not treated in exactly the same way, because being treated in the same way has to work on many different levels. You cannot just sort of say that, okay, well, I want to be treated the same as that person, but when it comes to this faction, I don't want to be treated the same as someone else.
It's not a pick and mix.
And that's my point.
It's a very difficult thing. It's a long debate. Ramsey says this. Did you know that Zuckerberg's companies have over 5,000 data points on each person with an account on Facebook? What's IG?
Instagram.
Oh, is that what they call it? Instagram. They know more about us than even MI6 they know about us, and our family members. Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you want, I scared the hell out of myself last night. I watched a very interesting YouTube video of a series of interviews with Elon Musk, who I think is an amazing man. Elon Musk, you should find it. I know we're running up to the end of the show, on his fears about artificial intelligence. He is very, very concerned about it. Very concerned about it. It's not the stuff of science fiction. It's the reality. And he said it in a beautiful way. He said, if we're building a road, and the video then had a steamroller, and we come across an anthill, we continue to build the road. It's not that we hate the ants. It's that we're building a road. The ants we have no feelings toward the ants. Artificial intelligence, if we get in their way, they would treat us the same way as the anthills. Not that they don't like us or they hate us. We're just in their way.
Correct.
It was. You really should watch it. Honestly, everyone, you should watch this thing. It's short because it's a salutary lesson. You just walking to your own demise, happily singing songs and not thinking what the hell's going on here. We opened up our lives to social media. Be very careful what we're opening up our lives to with artificial intelligence.
And that's, I'm afraid, all we've got time for today, folks. On that happy note, thank you very much indeed. Chrissy Richards says, where does tit for tat come from? My expression would be Gemma Collins. Thanks very much.
Hey!
Bye.